Hi, everyone. I'm Bradford.
And I'm Bradford.
And this is Spooky Time with Bradford and Bradford. Today, we're talking about a really weird movie. What's the name of the movie, Bradford?
Society.
Society. So we talked about this movie a long time ago, and then we saw it a long time ago. So tell me, Bradford, how did you learn about this movie?
Well, I get a lot of my horror movie information these days from James A. Janice.
Kill Count Guy?
Yeah, Dead Meat.
All right,
Yeah,
and so,
so
is he a fan of this movie?
I think he appreciates a passion project, as do I. This movie is definitely a passion
It
project.
is, and tell us the name of the guy who did the makeup again.
Screaming Mad George.
Screaming Mad George, and he got it legally changed to Screaming Mad George. So we're talking about Society. So Society is a 1989 film. It's kind of a social commentary, but it's very blunt. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's scary, and sometimes it's just plain weird.
So the plot is basically a story that's just leading up to the last, I think, 20 minutes of the film. Yeah, so basically, this one guy, Bill, is like, I don't fit in here. I think I'm adopted because he has rich parents and his sister. He doesn't feel really connected to them because they're rich and evil.
Yeah.
And so he tells the psychiatrist
he's a down to earth football player guy.
He just wants to play basketball.
And he's running for class president?
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
Yeah. So basically this whole time it's kind of like building tension, and this one guy's like, the sister's ex-boyfriend is like, there's something going on. He finds a recording, he gives him a recording, and he's like, whoa, what the fuck's happening in here? Basically there's a lot of weird incest going on, or so he thinks, and he's like, hey, psychiatrist, I want to tell you about this, here's proof. Here you go. And then he comes back and it's like, what? It's not proof? He's like,
you're delusional. You need some meds.
And basically, it ends up with, like, he thinks his friend dies in a car crash, blah, blah, blah. He goes to the hospital and he's, like, legally dead because they're trying to, do some things. And then him and his best friend wind up at his house, and the shunting happens. So the big reveal, it's kind of hinted at that they're aliens, but they're not aliens. They're Earthlings that have coexisted with humans, basically feeding off them some type of way. But yeah.
Yeah, so like absorbing them, eating them, feeding off of them. Just as you were saying, that the movie, it seems like a long introduction into this weird, perverted, funny, disgusting, kind of a little bit scary makeup special effects extravaganza. So as far as the themes, so it's basically the rich are eating the poor, and one of the characters basically says, the rich have always been here feeding off of the poor. But I don't really know that the filmmakers are really intent on, like, we really want to talk about the wealth gap that's going on in America, and it's a broken system and things like that. So I don't know. Did you take the message sincerely, or was this just kind of an excuse to have the visual effects?
I would say that social commentary is the setting of this movie. Like, you can have a setting that's interesting. It's like, whoa, we're in space, or like, whoa, it's a Western. So I think, like, societal commentary is just the setting of the movie.
It's like I want a horror movie that takes place in social commentary.
Yes.
So, what score do you want to give plot and themes for Society?
Since the plot was kind of just leading up to the end, and it was just leading up to Act 3, and the theme was a little bit one-dimensional. I think I'm going to take a lot of points off here and say like 6. But I did think like the theme of like a societal horror movie was kind of cool. But yeah,
I'm gonna have to. Okay, so here's the thing about this movie is that I have to say it now. I don't think it's a very good movie, but it's one of those kind of bad movies that I sort of enjoyed watching because there's a cheesy.
Yeah, I was never like bored.
Yeah, I was never bored. I have to say, I was always intrigued with what was going on, what was going to happen, and things like that. But
I kind of felt like an open world map because there was no like conflicts driving the plot. So it's like, oh, what's he gonna do now?
Yeah,
oh, and
yeah. So I was never bored, but at the same time, even though I was never bored, which means I guess I was entertained, but I never finished watching a scene going like, that was a really good scene. That was quite
You're
the plot
just like,
twist.
Yeah, I wonder what's gonna happen now.
So I'm gonna give it a pretty low score of 4. So that's what I'm gonna give it. So let's move on to acting and characterization. So I guess I'll go first. So the acting, like I said, I think that this was a pretty cheesy movie, and that the characters are intentionally shallow characters, and in some cases that can be a good thing. I think that even though this is not a well-written movie, and it's very blunt and it's very gross and silly, I think that deep down, one of the screenwriters had some issues that he was trying to work through with his family or his feelings for relatives or something like that. So I didn't find the acting believable or the characters believable, and I don't think that the filmmakers were really trying. So that's fine. But because of that, it's like I'm not going to be invested in these characters at all. What did you think?
Yeah, I'd say that the characterization for all of the characters was flat, even for the main character.
Yeah.
I think the only depth that comes is like the dynamics between the characters and like as you said, kind of like the trauma that ensues.
So I'm going to give acting and characterization, I'm going to give it another 4. I think that's going to be my favorite number for this
I think
movie.
I'm going to give it a 4 as well.
All right. And next up, style and tone. So when we talk about style and tone, this is sort of it could be the feel of the setting. It's the mood that's created. It's kind of the design of the film.
I think the style and tone is kind of like social commentary. Like, I don't think it's a theme. I think it's like the tone of the movie. But yeah, it's a cool setting. Like, he's kind of running around this like, not dystopian because it's like regular life, but it feels dystopian. Like these pools and these parties, and I think it's a nice sinister setting to have it in like rich people's houses and like this clean, pristine, like very fancy building. So I do like that aspect of it.
This was like an undiscovered for me because I'd never heard of this movie until you told me about it, and so I felt like I'd gone back to the 80s. So this was a quintessential 80s look all throughout with the music, kind of the synthy early synthesizer music, and being on the beach in Hollywood and like filming at like different locations in rich people's houses that they probably just borrowed for the weekend. But the film begins with sort of creepy nursery rhyme music playing, and that scares me. And if you remember the film, it starts out, it's during the credits, just the credits. There's a boy singing like la la society. Yeah, he's like, come and join us. And you kind of see blurry images of, you don't know what's going on, but I think there's a giant uvula that's dangling around, and you can see some faces that are like happy and raptured, and other like 1 or 2 faces that are like in misery. And so when we were watching the credits, I was like, this thing's already freaking me out. and then the movie begins, and it's like, oh, it's a cheesy 80s movie. But the other part that freaks me out is the scene where the where our protagonist, our hero, goes basically to face his family, his sister and his mom and his dad that are in a bedroom doing who knows what. And when he goes in there, some of them are like merged together, like so they're basically kind of trading body parts and whatever. And the dad, I would show a clip of this, but then I'd probably get kicked off YouTube.
Forever.
But the dad comes out from the covers, and he's just like a pair of legs, and where the butt should be, that's where his head is. And he says, "Look, son, I really am a butt head." And that was the part where my brain broke a little bit. Where it's like I think I told you and Rose, it's like I don't know how to process this. So it did show me things I'd never thought of before. I'm not thankful that it did, but so with that in mind, I'm going to actually give style and tone. I don't know why. I'm gonna give it an 8 because of the 80s.
Because of the 80s. Yeah, I think I like the weird juxtaposition of like very traumatic experiences and very cheesy, like fun to watch 80s film.
Yeah.
I think I'll score it a little lower though. I'll probably give it a 7.
Okay. All right. And my calculator just stopped working, so that means that we're not going to have a grand total until later.
You can do it in editing.
We'll do it in editing. All right. Bradford, take us through some of the visual effects and what you liked and what you didn't like about the visual effects, and maybe some of the sound effects.
All right. So I'm going to spoil my score for this. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. Because as we've seen from my score for visual effects and sound effects on The Thing, I really love it when there's practical effects for most of the gore, and it's like weird and surreal and like not necessarily realistic, but like well executed. I'm glad that it comes from a place of passion and style and like uniqueness and originality, and I think it's like nothing I've ever seen before. Yeah, I love it a lot.
Cool. And speaking of something we haven't seen before, we haven't seen you with a frog hat on and a mask. So, well, I like your frog hat.
Does it look like the mouth?
You indulge me. I was going to say, could you like, yeah, put it like down like that, and then oh my god, like you're totally frog. You're full on frog now. I love it. I'm going to, and I'm not going to be as generous as you, but I'm going to score it well because I think you were right that they were having a good time. They loved what they were creating. So I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Yeah. One more thing I want to say about this. It's like an extremely personal scoring for me because I am one of those horror like fanatics where there's a point in which I enjoy gore because like I enjoy it, and this movie allows me to like fully enjoy the gore because of like the surrealness. Because if it's too realistic, I'm like, that's sad and painful. But this one's like so out of this world that I'm like, this is amazing. Like it takes me out of the movie in a good way, if that makes sense. And I can just enjoy like these new creations rather than somebody's like painful death.
All right, spookiness. So spookiness is the like how much did this scare us, and that could be while we're watching the film, but it could also be afterwards. Did we have trouble sleeping at night? Did we have nightmares? That sort of thing. I kind of already mentioned the beginning was the creepiest part for me. And I was always intrigued, like what's gonna happen, but pretty early on, because of the cheesiness and because of the lack of emotional stakes, there wasn't too much to be afraid of, with the exception, and this will count for spookiness, of I was always dreading what they were eventually going to show me. I got, again, from the hint of you talking about all the makeup design, I anticipated like there's going to be weirdness, there's going to be bizarre weirdness, and it kept delaying that. So that it's like there's only 20 minutes left in the movie. It's like, what are they going to show me? You know, so I was dreading what they were going to show me. I was dreading what was going to be revealed. And I do have to admit that there was a lingering sort of mental residue. I wanted to sort of take like I wanted to take some kind of brain shower. I wanted to clean my mind of some of the imagery that I saw. So to me, that kind of counts as spookiness as well. What about you?
Yeah, I think I had the same kind of viewing experience. First of all, I had spoilers, but experiencing it was very fun and cool for me because it's like it's all the parts of horror that make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily add to the spookiness effect. Like I like horror movies that are like a little more tragic, and that's a part of horror that I like. But in this one, it was just all the parts that make me joyful. So yeah, I mean, there's kind of tension building for the first part of it, but since the characterization was very flat, it was hard to like be stuck in this situation with the main character. So it didn't get me too hard.
Okay. So I think for my score, again, I'm trying to work out how I can score this because I wasn't scared during it, not really scared after it, but because that mental residue that I talked about, I think I'm going to give it a 6.5.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 6.
All right. Cool. Well, as far as the overall score, I love the frog face. I love it so much. As far as the overall score, I like the Muppet nod. Good. All right, so for the overall score, that score basically means it gets in the C category. So it's maybe not very scary at all, but at the same time, it's definitely a unique experience. And I would say that if you are a fan of practical effects, in particular, weird, gory, imaginative makeup effects, that this is kind of a must-see movie. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's so unique that you can't really experience it any other way besides watching it, you know?
Well, we took you through the weird world of society, and that spooky time with Bradford and Bradford. I'm Bradford.
And I'm Bradford.
And the next movie we're going to talk about is Stephen King and Joe Hill's adaptation filmic. And the next movie that we're going to talk about is Stephen King and Joe Hill's film adaptation of their novella, In the Tall Grass. I've got some tall grass right here. Oh, no, it's all dead. Never mind.